The park mansion was eerily silent, a stark contrast to the usual chaotic environment. Park Jimin was in his bedroom, snuggled in the sheets. He was still roaming in his dreamland, unaware of the little mischief going on with him. Soft giggles and hushed whispers were the only sources of sound piercing the serene morning silence. The soft murmur startled Jimin awake from his peaceful slumber. He groaned and opened his eyes. The sight before him made him smile. His three sons, Jimin, Jaehyun, and Jisung, were sitting around him. They grinned ear to ear as they noticed that he woke up. Morning, Dad. Jimin and Jaehyun greeted enthusiastically. Jisung grumbled something in his baby's voice, imitating his brother's. Morning, buddies. Jimin murmured groggily and opened his arms for them to snuggle in his embrace. However, a frown formed on his forehead when they giggled and got off the bed. The two older ones ran out of the room, snickering to themselves. Jimin blinked his eyes in confusion and looked at Jisung, who was chewing on his own hand. His doe eyes were stuck at the door from where his brothers disappeared, leaving him alone. Hey, little one. Jimin picked him up and settled him on his stomach. The little boy burst into fits of giggles, finding this entertaining. Jimin's lips twisted into a big smile, seeing him. He was a replica of his wife. Shall we go back to sleep? He made him lay on his chest and patted his head to lull him to sleep. Jisung lay quietly for a few minutes before he let out a soft whine and thrashed his limbs. Of course, he heaved out a sigh, rolling his eyes as he loosened his grip around Jisung. Jisung rolled off his stomach and looked towards the door and then back at Jimin. Do I have spikes on my body, Mr. Sir? You cling to my wife for hours and can't hug me for more than a few moments, you little brat. Jimin narrowed his eyes at Jisung, who laughed in return as though he understood that he made his father annoyed. Jisung crawled towards the edge of the bed in an attempt to get down. Jimin panicked and grabbed him before he could fall. Your mother will kill me if you got a single scratch, let alone falling off the bed, so kindly spare your dad, who is unfortunately getting old. Jimin lightly smacked his bum and put him down on the floor. Jisung wasted no time and sprinted out of the room. Jimin sighed and shook his head in helplessness. He fell back on the bed to sleep for a while. Jimin, wake up or else no lunch for you. He jolted up from the bed as he heard you shouting from downstairs. He rose from the bed and stood in full alert mode. I'm awake, he yelled back in response. Even my wife is not my wife anymore. She is always in her mother's mode. What a sad life. He pouted sadly and ran his hand through his morning messy hair. Gone were the days when the mornings were full of lovely talks and kisses. Now the mornings are like, get your ass off the bed, or no lunch, or sleep on the couch. He mimicked your tone and slumped down on the bed. He grabbed his face in his palms, tapping his fingers on his cheeks. I'm losing my youth, and my wife as well. I need to find a way to awake the old romantic wine. I need some spice in my life. He thought to himself, pondering over every possibility to bring you closer to him. He wanted to bring back the old days when you were only a couple and not parents. Jimin, get down in 5 minutes or you are leaving without breakfast. His eyes widened in horror as he heard you screaming from downstairs. He realized that he had wasted almost 30 minutes thinking about you. Coming, babe. He rose from the bed and rushed towards the bathroom, but his steps halted in the middle when his eyes fell on the mirror. Who the fuck is that? He pointed at the mirror and walked closer, only to realize that it was his own reflection. What the heck? He snapped in disbelief, looking at his reflection from head to toe. He had a habit of sleeping topless, and this had awakened his son's inner artist. They had painted him in every shade of color. He couldn't quite pinpoint which color was which. His face was painted with black and blue paint. There were streaks of every other lighter shade on his chiseled chest. The outline of his abs was highlighted with a bright neon pink color. Out and out, he looked like a clone. He wasn't crying outside, but he was legit wailing from inside. What am I? A fucking canvas? What have they done to me? He looked at his arms, which were painted with a combination of red and blue. At this point, I think one day my sons would paint me black and blue and hang me in a museum. The most unique sculpture, a human tired of his life. He took a last glance at himself and stormed inside the bathroom, knowing if he stayed a moment longer, he would end up crying. Jimin rushed downstairs, terrified of witnessing your anger. As he descended the last stair, a pillow came flying in his direction. His eyes widened and he instinctively bent down, thereby successfully dodging the pillow. He heaved a sigh of relief and straightened up, but as he did so, another pillow hit right across his face. He closed his eyes, bearing the impact and cursing his life internally. Opening his eyes, he came across the sight of his sons. The two older ones were ready in their school uniform, while the youngest one was sitting on the floor behind them playing with his toys. They grinned as their eyes met Jimin's, but their smile dropped when Jimin didn't smile back. Jimin looked around the living area. The cushions were scattered everywhere. Then he averted his gaze back at them. Crossing his arms across his chest, he gave them a stern look. What did I say about playing with pillows? He raised his eyebrows, switching his gaze between Jimin and Jaeyoon. They both shared a glance and hung their head low. We talked about it last time, right? Your mom gets tired of cleaning up the mess you guys create. Play with your toys as much as you want, but do not scatter the pillows around. I said it right. The boys nodded, not daring to look up at their father. As though sensing the seriousness of the matter, Jisung sat straight, discarding his toys away. His head was hung low as well, as though he was being a shareholder in the scolding. Pick up all the pillows and put them back in their place. Come on, do it. He watched as his sons moved around the living room, picking up the cushions and putting them back on the couch. After completing the said task, they looked at Jimin, who finally gave them a wide smile. He knelt on the floor and spread his arms. Jimin and Jaeyoon ran towards him and hugged him tightly. Meanwhile, Jisung, not very fond of cuddling his father, crawled back to his playmat. We are not playing with the pillows again, okay? The little boys bobbed their heads. Jimin pressed a kiss on each of their foreheads and looked at the third one, who was busy in his own world. Jisung, don't you want to hug your dad? Jisung glanced at him once and then went back to smack his soft toys on the floor, completely ignoring his presence. Jimin shook his head in helplessness. He was used to Officer's indifference. Okay boys, go and play. He pushed himself off the floor. Jimin and Jaeyoon ran to join Jisung, and Jimin took it as an opportunity to have some good alone time with you. He quietly sneaked inside the kitchen. He stood near the threshold and watched you rushing here and there, arranging breakfast and packing lunch. Though Jimin had hired helpers, you cooked food by yourself because your sons were fond of the food cooked by you. With hushed steps, he advanced towards you. Excitement filled him as he anticipated some moments of love with you. But his life wasn't a bed of roses anymore, especially after the birth of his 3 sons. Mom, his 2 sons sprinted past him and hugged you before he could even reach you. He stood there, without moving, gaping at the scene before his eyes. He watched his son receiving his share of kisses from you. Even before he could sober up from this moment of heartbreak, Jisung crawled from the gap between his legs and clung to your leg. You picked him up and peppered kisses on his chubby cheeks. Upon noticing that you were not even looking at him, rather your attention was on your 3 boys who were clinging to your sides, Jimin quietly made his way to the dining table and settled down. He rested his face in the crooks of his palm, his lips puckering in a pout. He felt ignored. More than that, he felt jealousy seeping into his nerves. He never thought he would ever get jealous of his sons getting affection by his wife. The train of his thoughts broke when he felt a kiss on his temple. He blinked his eyes and looked at his side to find you smiling at him. Morning, have your breakfast. He glanced at his plate where his breakfast was already served and looked back at you. You pressed it back on his lips and occupied your seat, which was between Jimin and Jisung. Jimin blushed like a teenager boy who got noticed by his crush and had his breakfast, stealing glances at you occasionally. The breakfast was chaotic as Jason threw tantrums and having food, and the other two rumbled about the new video games. Where are you going without your school bags? Go and grab them from inside. You palmed your face when you watched your sons walking out casually without their backpacks. They ran inside and you looked at Jimin who laughed at their antics. They are just like you. Me? Come on babe, I'm very responsible. He paused when he waved his car keys in front of his face. He chuckled and scraped his neck awkwardly. Thank you. He took the car keys from you and inched closer to you. A goodbye kiss, you snickered when he puckered his lips and leaned towards your face. But the Satans of his life came back and pushed him away before hugging your legs. Bye mom, they sang in unison and pulled you down to leave a kiss on each of your cheeks. After that, they grabbed Jimin's hands and tugged at them. Let's go dad or we'll be late. Before Jimin could react, they dragged him outside. Hey, what about me? You pressed your lips to stop yourself from laughing as you watched Jimin's helpless expression. He kept glancing back at you as his son dragged him towards the car. Soon he gave up and drove away with them. You chuckled and shook your head. Walking inside, you found Jisung sitting at the threshold of the living room. Mom and Jisung time. Finally, he whispered to himself as Jimin and Jaeyoung drifted off to sleep. Jisung was already sleeping in his cradle. Finally, the third wheels fell asleep. He stifled a cheer of victory and did a little happy dance. Adjusting the baby monitor, he switched off the lights and went out, closing the door as quietly as possible. Entering the room, Jimin locked the door. As his eyes met yours, his lips twisted into a smirk. They fell asleep? Yes, he replied and jumped on the bed, startling you. You reclined back as he hovered over you. Nobody is there to disturb us now. We are all alone, just you and me. He snatched the book from your hands which you were reading and tossed it on the nightstand. He pinned you down on the bed with your hands on either side of your head. Words muffled in his mouth as he attached his lips with yours. He swallowed your words of protest, deepening the kiss even more. You wrenched your wrists out of his hold and tangled them in his silky locks. He let out a muffled groan when you tugged at his hair. His kiss turned even more passionate, knocking air straight out of your lungs. You smacked his shoulders when you felt your eyes rolling at the back of your head due to lack of air. He left your lips only to trail his kisses towards your jaw and down to your neck. You sucked a deep breath as his sensuous kisses aroused goosebumps all over your body. Your stomach twisted in anticipation. You shuddered beneath him as he pressed an open-mouthed kiss on your pulse. Sweet giggles filled the air as he rubbed his nose on your ticklish spot. He smiled against your skin, a warm feeling surging in his heart. He rubbed his day-old stubble on your neck, eliciting a fit of giggle from you. I miss you so much, he murmured, lifting his head from your neck and pressing soft pecks all over your face until his lips found yours in yet another fervent kiss. Things heated up pretty quickly as Jimin's hands brushed along your curves, his touch extra soft and affectionate against the curves you had gained through 3 pregnancies. He just couldn't stop admiring your strength of pushing out 3 bundles of mischiefs. But again, Jimin's life wasn't a bed of roses no more. Before things could proceed further, you got interrupted by continuous knocks on the door. Jimin groaned and dropped his head in the crook of your neck. God, why? He whined in disappointment and frustration. You patted his shoulder. Get off me, please. He closed his eyes in irritation as the knocks got louder, followed by their calls for their mother. Jimin rolled off you and went to open the door. Fuck my life. As soon as he unlocked the door, Jimin and Jaeyoung rushed past him and climbed on the bed beside you. Jimin looked at the third one, who was looking up at him. Heaving out a loud sigh, Jimin picked him up. Jisung thrust his legs in protest as soon as his eyes landed on you. Oh yeah, sir, go to your mom. I won't touch you, he said sarcastically, putting him on the bed. Jimin rolled his eyes as he watched Jisung climbing on his stomach and he lay his head on your chest. You were squeezed between your three sons, Jimin and Jaehyun on your either side and Jisung above you. What are you guys doing here? You slept, right? He squinted his eyes, jealousy creeping into his nerves yet again. Frustration was evident on his face. He wasn't getting time with you. It felt like you both were drifting apart. We want to sleep here with mom. Jaehyung popped his head in agreement. Jisung, as the unbothered king he was, played with your shirt buttons. How about a no? Go and sleep in your room. Come on, get up. They shook their heads and buried their faces in your arms. You looked at Jimin with bleeding eyes. Jimin, let them sleep here tonight. You pleaded on the behalf of them. Jimin looked at you in disbelief. What? No, what about us? Only for today. From tomorrow onwards, they'll sleep in their room. Right, boys? They vigorously nodded their heads. Jimin sighed, throwing his hands in defeat. Fine, do whatever you want. He grumbled incoherent words under his breath and lay on the bed on his stomach. Jaehyun, who was lying in the middle, turned to Jimin and poked his arm. Jimin raised his eyebrows at him. Dad, does your back hurt? Jimin didn't expect this coming. Nevertheless, he nodded. A little. Dad works all day so that he can buy new games for his little devils. Shall I massage your back? Jimin smiled and shook his head, stroking his head lovingly. Go to sleep. Dad is totally fine. Dad, keep lying like this. I learned something from my friend. I'll do it for you. Jimin frowned in confusion as Jaehyung got up and sat on his back. Jaehyung, I'm okay, buddy. Come here and sleep. Jaehyun ignored his words and slowly stood up on his back. Jimin groaned as he walked on his back. His eyes closed in response as Jaehyun's feet put just the right pressure on his sore muscles. Fascinated by the new play, Jimin too joined Jaehyun, walking on Jimin's back. Jimin let out occasional groans as his sons helped him release the pressure of his tense muscles. Meanwhile, Yu and Jisung quietly enjoyed the show. Jimin, a little down, he grunted with closed eyes. He felt much better after this unexpected massage. He was grateful to his sons. Okay, enough for today. They got down and Jimin rolled to lay on his back. Jimin and Jaehyun lay on either side, resting their head on each of Jimin's arms. Thank you, buddies. I'm feeling much better. He kissed their foreheads and looked at Jisung, who was staring at him without blinking. You two want a kiss? As expected, Jisung turned his head away. Jimin just shook his head, not surprised even a little bit. Little chaotic family drifted off to sleep. All eyes turned to Jimin as he graced the house with his unexpected early presence. A smile edged across his face. You are early today. Yeah, actually there is a reason. Kids, do you want to visit Cookie Uncle? The boys cheered loudly, excited to meet their favorite Cookie Uncle. Unexpectedly, Jisung too clapped in excitement. Guess he too was fond of someone other than his mother. Wine, could you help me pack this stuff? I'll drop them at Jungkook's house. But all of a sudden, does Jungkook know? You asked, confused by the sudden plan. Oh, come on, babe. Quit asking questions and help me pack this stuff. He grabbed your wrist and dragged you towards the room. Confused and worried, you followed him, giving up in front of his insistence. Oh, Jiminshi, what a pleasant surprise. Wait, junior Jiminshis are also here. Hello, kids. He bumped his face with Jimin and Jaehyun and poked Jisung's cheeks, who was in Jimin's arms. Jungkook, do you miss my kids? No. Oh, how silly of me. Of course you do. Jimin handed him the bags and then passed Jisung in his arms. Jungkook blinked his eyes, grabbing whatever Jimin was handing him. Guys, don't trouble Cookie Uncle. I'll pick you guys up in the morning. Bye. The kids waved their hands as Jimin hopped in the car and drove off. Jungkook glanced at the kids, still in a daze. What just happened? Uncle, Dad said you have some cool games. Jungkook looked down at him and smiled. I do. Come on in, kiddos. Let's have fun tonight. Jimin, why? He cut you off by hugging you tightly. Swiping you off the ground, he twirled you around, making you chuckle. Finally, you are all mine. He put you down and pressed a long kiss on your forehead. No one will disturb us tonight. But what about kids? They are with Jungkook. Don't worry, Jungkook is good with kids. He'll handle them. For now, focus on me. He palmed you back and yanked you closer until there was no gap left between you both. Your hands found their way to his shoulders and hooked around his neck. I missed you so much. He pressed it back on your lips with every word. I missed you too, but there is a problem. You placed your palm on his mouth as he leaned in for a kiss. What? He asked, his brows twisted due to concern. I'm hungry. Jimin smirked in response and pressed his forehead against yours. Me too, baby girl, I'm hungry too. He whispered seductively and winked at you. I am hungry for food. Oh, I can order for you. Tell me what you want to eat. He pulled out his phone, but you held his hand. No, don't order from outside. Let's cook together. Jimin threw his head back and let out a cry in protest. No, it will take a lot of time and I can't wait that long. But it's been so long since we cooked together. Please, for me. You darted your puppy eyes at him, knowing he couldn't resist it. He groaned in helplessness and picked you up in one swift motion. Fine, but I won't listen to anything after this. No excuse. He nodded with a chuckle as he carried you towards the kitchen. His frustration turned into happiness when he saw you smile. All of his irritation ebbed away. The dinner was done and you were washing the dishes. Jimin was holding you from behind, leaving occasional kisses on your cheeks, neck, and shoulders. We should do it more often. I guess so, but the house feels empty without kids. You wiped your hands with a towel and turned around to face him. He planted a kiss just below your right eye. You are right, but a few hours won't hurt, right? He murmured and he proceeded to do the same below your left eye. He booped your nose with his and then kissed on your nose tip. Just you and I as a couple, away from the responsibilities of parenting 3 kids, he whispered, trailing his kisses down to your upper lip and then lower lip. You closed your eyes in ecstasy. You couldn't deny that you missed these kind of moments with him. You opened your eyes and stared at him for a moment. His captivating eyes seemed to hypnotize you as you lifted your head and connected your lips with his. He responded in a fraction of a second. Swiping you off the ground, he made his way out of the kitchen. He lowered you on the couch and hovered over you. You spread your legs, making space for him to adjust. Your lips still connected in a passionate lip lock. He left your lips with a pop sound and trailed his kisses to your neck. He sucked on your soft skin, leaving deep red marks behind. His fingers found your top buttons as he undone the first one. Pulling the fabric aside, his kisses proceeded to your collarbone. You lay there, letting out soft mews at the softest touch of his as he carried on with his sweet torture across your neck. He paused and lifted his head to meet your eyes. His lips were red and glistening with the remnants of his doings. His eyes kept making intense eye contact with yours as his hand proceeded to unbutton your shirt. His fingers, warm and soft, grazed against your skin. You sighed in contentment, your back arching in anticipation. Just as he was about to unbutton the last button of your shirt, the doorbell rang, startling you both out of your carnal dreams. Your eyes widened. You looked at Jimin, who mirrored your expressions. Are we expecting some guests tonight? He asked as he got off you and stood up to his feet. You shook your head and buttoned your shirt before fixing your hair. You followed Jimin to the door. The door opened, revealing Jungkook with your 3 sons. He was holding Jisung and Jaeyoung in his arms while Jimin was hanging on his back. He looked like he would cry any moment. "Mom," they called out in unison and grinned ear to ear. Jungkook put the older ones down, who immediately rushed to hug Yoo while Jisung looked at Jimin. His chin quivered as though he would start crying. Jisung extended his hand towards Jimin, catching him by surprise. "You want to come to me?" Jimin took Jisung in his arms and he instantly nuzzled his face in the nook of his neck. Jimin turned to Jungkook and glared at him. "I raised you almost all your life and you couldn't handle my kids for a night?" He whispered, yelled at him. Jungkook stepped closer and cupped Jimin's face between his palms. "Jimin," he paused and pressed a kiss on Jimin's forehead, whose face contorted in disgust. "You go and get a girlfriend, but don't do these cheap things with me. I have a wife." Jungkook gave him a look and reiterated his hands back. "I am so grateful to you, but I wasn't even 1% of how your products are." Jungkook glanced at Jimin's sons and then back at him. Jimin frowned in confusion. "What do you mean? My kids are very, very well mannered." "Your kids only look cute. They are devils under the facade of innocent faces. They turned my house upside down within an hour. They said they'll give me a back massage. Who gives a massage with a fucking baseball bat? My whole back hurts." "But uncle, my friend said we should try new things. We thought we would make you feel good." Jungkook forced out a smile, which looked very fake. "That's so sweet of you. Never try this again, okay?" Jungkook turned his focus back on Jimin. "And this, a foot taller son of yours, bit me when I tried to feed him." "Uncle, Jisung does not like mushrooms. That's why he bit you." Jungkook looked at Jimin, his expressions shifting as though he would cry. "Well, Jisung actually doesn't like mushrooms." Jungkook let out a shaky sigh and bowed 90 degrees. "I'm heading back home. Take care." He waved his both hands and disappeared within the blink of an eye. Jimin turned to look at Yo. Silence spread in the living room as they all switched glances at each other. "Wanna watch a movie?" The kids nodded and jumped in excitement. "Go and choose a movie with your mom. I'll be back with some snacks." He shared a look with Jimin, and you both chuckled in unison. With Jisung nestled in his embrace, he made his way to the kitchen to bring some snacks. Though Jimin's life wasn't a bed of roses anymore, it was something he always dreamt of, a perfect mixture of sweetness and spiciness.